Welcome back to another post-media Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garriock, pleased to be joined by Ken Warren today. And Ken, as we sit here today, there's an awful lot of discussion regarding the Senators' blue line. And a name that has come forward in the last few days is that of former Senators defenseman Erik Karlsson. I think we're in a situation where the San Jose Sharks, Mike Grier declared after the GM's meetings in Toronto Tuesday that he's willing to listen on Erik Karlsson. I think Grier has been doing his due diligence, knows that Carlson makes his home in Ottawa, probably reached out to the Senators, but there's no fit there, and I don't see it happening.
No, I mean, first of all, there's a number of ways why it doesn't really work. First of all, okay, I mean, the contract, Carlson's contract, what is it, $10 million a year with $9.5 million?
$11.5 million cap hit.
There you
And
go.
it runs through 26, 27.
Okay, so the starting point, if the Sharks were even willing to waive half of it, I mean, what are they getting back in exchange? And I don't see, sure that people are trying to connect the dots and say, okay, there might be cap room for the Senators. There's no way. You'd have to give back draft. I just don't see it. And beyond, even if you could get the numbers going, you can't bring back Erik Karlsson at this point in his career to come back. He was the captain of the team. He was the dressing room. You can't bring him back into that dressing room again. It's Thomas Chabot, it's Jake Sanderson on the blue line. As much as they need help, I just do not see that happening with Karlsson's history in Ottawa.
Well, and I think you're right, Ken. I think the torch has been passed in that room, right?
Yeah.
And as much as they needed a defenseman, and look, there's no question he could help them. Okay, let's we've seen the state of that blue line. There is no question he could help them on the ice, but this team is in a different time now. It's turned the page, right?
Well, you're taking on a 32-year-old with that kind of contract. That just goes against the grain of everything they talked about. And I know it's Erik Karlsson. It's not some run-of-the-mill defenseman, but I still think, and whether we're going to probably talk about Jakob Chychrun. I still think it's a more defensive-oriented, solid top four guy. We saw Jake Sanderson the other night look like a very good. He may become a very, very good defenseman. You put him and the Chabot in the mix. Who are they missing the most back there, Bruce? It's Artem Zub. Like who?
Yeah.
That's who they're missing.
Yeah.
They're not missing another flashy offensive guy.
Well, and I was going to say to you, this is where Erik Karlsson doesn't fit in either. They want to sign Artem Zub to a long-term deal. They'd like to make it happen. I think quietly behind the scenes, those discussions are happening, and I think that the two sides have agreed not to discuss anything publicly. You mentioned Jake Sanderson. Jakob Chychrun has not been a fit so far because of the asking price, but there are other things they want to do back there. But let's start with Sanderson, because Sanderson to me has shown an awful lot of maturity for a guy his age.
It's interesting. The team was on the road in Philadelphia last week before they finally broke the slump. And in Philadelphia, the team practiced at University of Pennsylvania ice rink. It's just kind of a dated rink in the middle of a campus. And I couldn't help but think, here's Jake Sanderson, who anyone else his age is going to be on a campus somewhere at 20 years old, and he's out there. He's the last guy on the ice. He's just having the time of his life. This is in the middle of a 7-game losing streak, and the world was caving in on the Senators at that point. But I thought it was quite crazy that he was out there, no worries in the world, just going out there and playing because he's just a kid.
Now he has shown tremendous maturity, and do you think, and I believe this, but do you think he has certainly put himself on the radar screen for the Calder Trophy, perhaps, and is probably, we were all talking about Shane Pinto at the start of the season, but I think as Rookie of the Year, I think he's kind of moved ahead of him on that front.
I think so. It's so much harder to play defense in the NHL as a rookie, right? Stepping in. I mean, watch Owen Power on the other side of Buffalo last night. Those two guys, to me, I think are going to be front runners. Just look at the minutes played. That's an indication of what a player means to his team. And now Jake Sanderson, I don't think he's going to be playing 25 minutes every night when Chabot comes back, but he's going to be well over 20 minutes every night. As a rookie, is very difficult.
After the GM's meetings in Toronto Tuesday, Ken, Pierre Dorion came out again publicly in support of Coach DJ Smith, and I think we'll see where things are at the end of the West Coast swing. But do you think that coaching has been an issue, or do you think this is a far bigger problem?
I think at times there's some decisions that you can pinpoint or nitpick, certain things in overtime, who takes a face off, this and that. All this stuff gets magnified when you lose, of course. But and I wondered about the use of Nikita Zaitsev earlier in the year. But I mean, big picture, you do need more from your big players at key moments, and maybe those guys, maybe a lot of us, a little overestimated the impact the young guys could have, in crucial situations, whether they're doing enough. They're still a young team, right? Tim Stützle, going to be a great talent, but he's sort of like a guy trying to do too much. And how do you coach that? How does that guy develop into it? So I'm not sure it's completely a coaching thing. I think it's about players maturing into the roles that eventually they want them to get there.
And I think one of the things we've seen, and he's had a bit of a breakout as we speak today, is Alex DeBrincat has had lots of opportunities to score. And he has 3 goals in 3 straight games as we speak, coming off a 4-1 win over the Buffalo Sabres on Wednesday night in Ottawa. But Ken, he wasn't brought here to get assists. No, he was brought here to score goals. And you need that scoring consistency from him if you're going to have any success, don't you?
Yeah, 2-time 40-goal scorer. That's he's making a lot of money to score goals. And I say he's had a lot of chances, maybe not as many prime chances as he could have. And let's face it, without Josh Norris there, they've had to juggle things around. Trying to find the chemistry is interesting. I mean, if we looked at it at the start of the year, Derek Brassard wasn't going to be a center. I mean, that's it's been a little bit crazy with the injuries, but he's got to bury, and he's got to bury on the power play. That's where Ottawa's got to be. I think they were top 10 going into last night, so they've got to stay there, and DeBrincat has to be more of a factor on the power play.
Well, yeah, their power plays. I think you're right. It's ranked 9th when I looked this morning. And the other thing is, in that Buffalo game, you were talking to the coach a little bit about penalty killing. They killed off 6 of 7 power plays in the first 30 minutes of that game against Buffalo. That's an area too, though, that needs a little bit more consistency, isn't it? The whole penalty killing area.
I would say it needs more consistency, but the penalties they're taking now, you can
stick penalties are brutal.
Yeah, I think you can always argue that this shouldn't be a call or that shouldn't be a call, and some days I think the refs seem to give you more than the other team or whatever it is, but they got to stop taking the stick penalties. And it goes back to training camp, Bruce. DJ Smith, I remember saying, we're taking too many stick penalties. We're taking too many stick penalties. And I mean, if you're spending that much time in a game, of course that you're going to wear down your penalty killers. So they got to find some combinations that work, but they've also got to stay out of the box.
Let's look ahead a little bit here now. The next 5 games, I mean, every game is pivotal for this team now, given the way they've started and not getting any points in games that they had an opportunity to. But Ken, they play They play the
New Jersey.
Right. Yeah, they play. I'll get it right. The New Jersey Devils on Saturday afternoon, and then they head out on a 4-game road swing. And I was going to look it up before I go, but San Jose, Anaheim, Vegas, LA, those have not been kind to them over the years. And do you think they sit down at the end of this road trip and then make some determinations on where they go next?
We talked about just before we came on the air, even after beating Buffalo last night, to get to 100 points, which is what playoff spot was in the East last year, they would have to go 40, 18, and won. Now, it seems insane that they could do that. Now, I know the goal wasn't necessarily to make the playoffs, but to fight for the playoffs. But to
Yeah.
get yourself into that race, you got to play 650 hockey or something like that. I mean, if somebody can crunch the numbers, but that's nuts. So you've got to at least get out of that out west treading water, right? You can't. You
Yeah, you
can't.
got to get out with a split, or let's say if there's 8 points available on that trip, Ken, you got to come home with 5 of 8, right? Like you can afford an overtime loss or a shootout loss somewhere in there.
Well, especially because it's out west, you're not losing a point
Yeah.
to the east, but you're getting to that 20 game mark, and that's where you got to look at it hard and say, well, what is needed here? Is it a defense? Do you need to then go get that defenseman, or by then maybe like Zub and Shabbat are both back, right? So then maybe that changes the equation.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where the Senators go from here. They've got a fairly busy week ahead with 5 games, I think, counted in a stretch of 9 days, starting with that visit by the Devils, then a stop in San Jose, Vegas, Anaheim, and LA before heading home, and I think facing the Rangers at home on November 29th. We'll see where this goes. Thanks for your time today, Kenny. For the Post Media Senators panel, I'm Bruce Garriock, pleased to be joined by Ken Warren.
Thank you.